When they said it would have over 1,000 planets, they weren't bragging about how big it is, they're bragging about how small it is. Let me explain. Welcome everyone, this is Starfield Signal, the place for everything Starfield. I am your host, Luke Woodward, and today we're going to be talking about why everyone is wrong about Starfield's planets. I'm excited for this one, let's get into it. Now, ever since Starfield has been rumored, people have speculated on just what space exploration is going to look like, what it looks like to travel across the galaxy to different star systems, and what it would look like to visit different planets. Well, last year, Todd Howard himself revealed the first gameplay footage of Starfield, during which he shared this awesome information.
You can land into Atlantis, but you can also land and explore anywhere on the planet. And it's not just this planet, it's all the planets in the system. From barren but resource-heavy ice balls to Goldilocks planets with life. And not just this system, but over 100 systems. Over 1,000 planets, all open for you to explore.
Now, this was huge and exciting news, but of course, with most things on the internet, everyone started chiming in with their 2 cents about why this is too big and why this is too many planets. And the prevailing thought at the time was that procedural generation of over 1,000 planets, this wasn't actually going to make the game more interesting, but it was going to essentially water down the experience with dull, barren, and useless planets. That's just going to waste the player's time. I don't necessarily buy this, but unfortunately, procedural generation has become somewhat of a trigger word in recent years. Bethesda's own Fallout 76 proved to be an absolute train wreck. Fellow space exploration games like No Man's Sky and Elite Dangerous, they also use procedural generation, and they have shown how it can often be used to generate more quantity of content as opposed to quality of content. And this has caused many people to be skeptical when it comes to how procedural generation can actually make a game better. An article came out just back in November of 2022 from PC Gamer, and it claims that there is no way 1,000 planets in Starfield are interesting. Author Wes Finland goes on to lament the woes of procedural generation, citing the historic game Spore and its inability to follow through on its grand promise of procedural generation. I get that, but there are a couple of problems here. First, Wes assumes that all procedural generation is made equal and uses a game that is built on technology from the year 2000 to make an argument about a game that is developing its own technology in 2023. Not exactly the same thing. In terms of technology, that's essentially going from the Flintstones to the Jetsons. Second, Wes blindly misses how procedural generation can take on various forms and be applied in countless different ways to make video games truly come alive. The game that put Bethesda on the map, for a lot of people, Skyrim, definitely used these systems to its advantage, and they were able to create one of the greatest games ever. So how exactly can Starfield use procedural generation to create all of these planets and still maintain a quality that builds into the overall experience and the value of the game? In a recent podcast with Lex Friedman, Howard actually gave some insight into how they are pulling this off.
How can we have a system to generate these planets and make them look, I'll say reasonable? And so we did find a way. We came up with a way, had prototyped of building tiles, like large tiles of landscape, the way we would usually build them. We kind of generate them offline, hand do some things, and end up with these very realistic looking tiles of landscape, and then built a system that wraps those around a planet and blends them all together. And we had pretty successful results with that. And so we thought, we could do this.
So Todd explains these planets aren't simply random computer code that decide everything about all of these planets. They actually start with handcrafted, quality design elements and developed a sophisticated system to integrate all of these assets together in a really smart way to make these planets. So we can know that every planet will be 100% unique, and it will be designed in a way to minimize pattern recognition because of how they've designed these massive land tiles. With this in mind, you might say, okay, I got it, everything's going to look and feel unique, but that doesn't necessarily mean that these planets will actually be interesting. I don't want to travel halfway across the galaxy and spend all kinds of fuel and resources just to land on a planet and have absolutely nothing to do. Well, Howard again agrees with you.
There was a big design kind of problem to solve in terms of, well, what's fun about landing on a planet where there's potentially nothing? Because there's a lot of planets and moons, if you kind of, right, in reality, that, well, there's nothing on them except resources. And so we spent a lot of time figuring out, okay, let's just lean in on that can be a lonely experience, as long as we tell the player, here's what's there, here are the resources that are there, go find them. But I equate it to that moment of we said about listening to the wind go and watching the sunset. And I do think there's a certain beauty to landing on a strange planet, being somewhat the only person there, building an outpost. And we are modeling all of the systems, because that's how we like to do things. So you can watch whatever that gas giant or moon, it will rotate and go, and sunrise, sunset, and all of those things that you would expect. And it's all really happening. And most people probably won't notice or appreciate all of that, but I think it gives them the ability to say, I want to go do that and see that on that place, as long as we tell them, hey, the quest leads over here. Here's where the handcrafted content is that you would expect. And then here's more of the open procedural planet experience.
So as far as wasting your time on these planets, it seems that the game is going to make it pretty clear what is handcrafted, curated content that is going to emotionally impact your story, and then what is extra space available for players who want to keep exploring and keep pushing out farther and farther from that main narrative. And it's with these points in mind about how the planets are actually designed and how they are easily identified as far as the content that you can find on them, that I think whenever they say a system as sophisticated as this has over 1,000 planets, they're not bragging about how big the game is, but relative to the possibilities of procedural generation, they've intentionally limited themselves to define a specific experience for players.
We do have many, but once you build that system, I think the numbers become, honestly, a little bit, we wrap it in so we can name them all and have a finite set, even though it's a very, very large number, but a set that we can, validate and know about, even though it's a huge number. But once you're building a system that can build a planet, a planet is sort of infinite space. We go back to the Daggerfall analogy, right? If you have systems to build that much space, doing 100 planets or 1,000 or 10,000 or 1,000,000 planets is not, it's just, you just change the number and press the button. But you can't name them all. You can't control, like, when you're getting in really big numbers, hey, what does this system way out here feel like if you take your ship and jump that far?
So even with procedural generation, they are crafting a feeling and experience that you can continue to have as you explore your first system all the way to the last. And even with that, they add a depth of gameplay to each system with a difficulty level.
We do level the systems. When you go to system, you'll see, oh, this is like a level 40 system. And us being able to at least control that scale is how we kind of ended up with the 100-ish systems we have.
I think I read that No Man's Sky can generate 18 quintillion planets. I'm sure that if Bethesda wanted to, they could design their procedural systems to rival, if not massively overshadow, that in theory. However, they seem to be taking a different approach. There seems to be every indication that Starfield will have a great balance between using the kind of procedural generation that helps develop spaces, items, quests, and all kinds of experiences, with the kind of handcrafted, emotional, and environmental storytelling that Bethesda games are famous for. That's why everyone is wrong about Starfield's planets. They aren't bragging about how large the game is. They are bragging about how they've taken the wonder and joy of exploring the unending universe and condensed that down into a finite experience that they can curate and polish. Hey, if you're into Starfield, click subscribe and the notify bell. We have a video coming up about how Starfield will have one of the most sophisticated economies we've ever seen in gaming. Hit that like button, as it is a huge help. Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and I hope you enjoyed the video. For now, may you find wonder as you journey through the stars.